The biggest challenge that understanding that, that it's not all pretty. I really hate hearing stories about players having to deal with, hecklers would be putting it lightly.
When you signed the 2020 CBA, it was celebrated as such a major step forward. The maternity protections, the salary increases. Did you think then that there was a real possibility there would be so much change in just a few years that you all might be opting out of that deal before it was done?
I think, going into not even signing the CBA, but negotiating and, taking it even further back, like deciding to opt out, there were a lot of unknowns, but we were very aware of where we wanted to go. And so we came into those negotiations with that energy, and historically, we're actually able to accomplish a lot of the things you just mentioned. I don't think that we went in expecting, okay, we're just gonna ride this one out as short as possible, but things evolved, things changed, and we had signed that right before we entered what ended up being the Wobble season. And so I think there was a really collective shift in perspective in terms of who we as the players are and how we represent this league and what it means for us to be a part of, the history of women in sports. And I think that's left us here where we are today.
Was there a specific turning point for this year, whether it was getting on charter flights, looking at TV ratings, when you looked around and it was just so clear, like, this is something really different that's come to the league?
I guess as someone who's been on the inside for a long time and have experienced so many different iterations of the league, I actually feel as though the turning point was perhaps the Final Four, and not even this year's Final Four. I feel like last year's Final Four, or at least now it would be 2 years ago. I think that was a bit of a turning point. As we started to experience these women competing at the collegiate level, I think we started really feeling how it would translate to the pros. There was this energy that we were experiencing with these women and just how they were performing in their own space in this new era of basketball. And that created a swell ultimately into what I think was one of the most amazing draft experience I had been a part of last year. And of course, all of the other changes, whether it was charter flights, whether it's, a lot of teams breaking ground with new facilities, just so many different aspects of what we've always known we wanted this league to be, but it finally coming to life. And not just it coming to life, but those who may not necessarily be on the inside keeping up with this growth as well.
And how did it feel to experience that? Like, as you said, you've seen so many iterations of this, like as a player leader. How did it feel to be at a moment where it felt like the rest of the world kind of finally caught up?
I had more of an attitude of like, welcome y'all, hey, what's up? You come, the water's warm. And so there are a lot of different emotions. I don't think I know, especially for the players, every experience with this growth was not positive, and I like to attribute that to being kind of the growing pains of something that is really taking off. But I lean heavily on the things that are to be celebrated, to be discovered, to be curious about, and to build off of. And so a lot of my emotions were around not just the excitement of bringing in perhaps new faces, but also the pride and engaging with those who have been with us for so long. And then ultimately everyone coming in and recognizing that we all have a hand in this growth that we're all experiencing.
How different were some of the conversations you had as a union leader this year compared to years past?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that, there's more hanging in the balance, if we're speaking kind of relative to the time that we're playing in. And so conversations with different athletes has been mostly about, being smart and knowing that we have options and ensuring that we can capitalize on the options that we do know that we have, but maintaining our collective collaboration and vision towards what we want. And I mean, my conversations have changed because the composition of the league is very different now. I'm serving my third term, and I was very young in the beginning, still almost looking up to those players that I was representing. And I think now that I'm older than almost all of the players and have had such an experience playing and also being a part of the executive committee and the players union, I feel as though I can maybe impart a little bit more advice and maybe a little bit more guidance, because, I've kind of view it as like passing the torch on. I'm not playing forever, like that's the reality. And I want to be able to leave things better than when I entered it.
How do you feel that you've grown as a leader in those 8+ years?
So, I mean, I think I definitely lean into kind of a servant leadership. It's kind of who I am. I'm a Cancer sign. I'm an oldest daughter in a Nigerian family. It's kind of, there's no escaping how I help and I nurture. But I think that I've tried to also lean on that for myself, helping and nurturing myself, whether it's, educating myself a little bit more, understanding that there's really no boundaries on who you can learn from. I learn a lot from different athletes in this league, different women in this league. They don't have to be older than me. They don't have to be more experienced. I think that there's a lot to say when I'm able to have conversations that really just yield information or experience that I don't personally have. I think that that's kind of the beauty of why we're able to mobilize the way we do in the W. And then, ultimately just ensuring that I'm accessible and I'm approachable. That's always kind of been how I've wanted to lead. And I want to make sure that that sustains.
And you mentioned a few moments ago the idea of a lot hanging in the balance here, but you all also having a lot of options. How do you think about leverage and power in this moment as you do head into these negotiations?
I feel like, it's time to stand on business. It's just kind of, you find yourself in different positions, not randomly, not by chance. I think that the time is now and we are here. And to not take advantage of that and not take advantage of how those two things have found each other in this moment, it would be a disservice to ourselves, to the league, to the union, to the history, and the future of, women's basketball in this case.
How do you set priorities for a negotiation as big as this one?
It's definitely not me who does it. There's a team for a reason. We have a phenomenal staff with the Players Association. We have an amazing board of advisors. And so a lot of what we do is teamwork. And my job is to ensure that the priorities are illustrated as by how we are able to get feedback from the largest governing body, which is the players. And so that's where the communication comes in. That's where asking questions of players and their experience, asking for ideas, pitching anything that they feel can make this league and their experience and the experience of those to come even better. And also those perhaps who have played. I think that making sure that we stay connected and we stay online as much as we can, because we're the ones experiencing this on a day-to-day. And what the players say is what's priority.
Is there anything that stands out as particularly important here to try to see changed, or anything that you really want to make sure that you all can try to address at the table?
Oh, we're still kind of early in the stages. There's no secret that salary and compensation is something that's very important, especially as we continue to see expansions of different teams. Also, as we continue to see, so many people wanting to aspire to play in this league. This is touted as the best league in the world. And so making sure that people are paid in a way that reflects their value has always been priority, and that hasn't changed.
With all the excitement around this year, I imagined also some challenges. You'd mentioned growing pains. What were kind of some of the biggest challenges you felt like you all faced this past year?
I mean, I think that the biggest challenge that for me was truly the pains of growing were perhaps a lot of new followers, a lot of new followers and different cohorts that came into something that we've cherished for so long, something that we've respected and admired for so long, and understanding that, that it's not all pretty, and I really hate hearing stories about players having to deal with, hecklers would be putting it lightly. There's a lot of harassment that the players have had to deal with. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of, it was experienced across the board, but most certainly by a lot of these Black women who ultimately are the foundation of this league. And so I don't hope, I expect, because that's the only thing we can do for things to not even get better, but for there to be more respect, for there to be more education, perhaps, more, like I said, more curiosity, and less hate. Yeah.
As the conversations around the league have gotten bigger, as we've seen so many more new voices try to get involved, is there anything that you feel like is being missed, or any aspect of the league that you want to shine more light on?
I think there's always stories that can be told. This is something that I've noticed and have been more vocal about since I joined. I think that ensuring that there's a diversity in storytelling and just heralding players who are doing awesome. I think that it's important for us to not miss those moments, no matter who the athlete is. But I also feel as though when those moments are missed, there's a level of accountability that I think is missed. I think that skirting around an issue is something that we've experienced and have tried to manage, both from the player side and the league side. I think as players, we try to do our best to be on the right side of things, or at least acknowledge when something is happening. And I see the league growing in that way, but I do feel as though that there's always a point of emphasis there when it comes to just facing things head on and with integrity and transparency in a way that I think that the players really do appreciate.
Did you feel that the league was prepared to navigate this change over the past year?
I don't think anybody was. And so, with that, I think we all have been anticipating, a growth. And for it to happen in the way that it did in this past year, I'm not sure that anybody was ready. And so, of course, we're making sure that we can get things done, still stay true to who we are, while also addressing and preparing and being ready for whatever comes our way. So it's really no knock, I think that these are great problems to be talking about, but I also think that it yields more learning opportunities.
What did that process look like for you last year of trying to catch up to everything that was happening in front of you?
I'm someone who I don't panic. I don't like to panic when things kind of start to change. I think that I like to kind of observe and see how things are going. But like I said, I feel like the pivot kind of occurred the year before that. So being at that Final Four and seeing what that environment was like and slowly experiencing that at the professional level, it wasn't necessarily a jolt, perhaps, but I do feel as though once you started playing games live, you're realizing oh man, it's loud in here. I can't hear anything, and even, getting the charters and being able to sleep in your own bed, the night after playing in Atlanta, and I'm sleeping in my bed in Seattle. That is something that I definitely had to get used to. I think I went from feeling like overly prepared for any scenario to now being able to relax a little bit and focus on playing. I think with so many of these changes and being able to engage with fans and share in the celebrations and share in the love of the sport, also came, resources that, are illustrated in like the practice facility that I get to play in, and then how we get to travel. It's not just experience, it's the vitality of what we do. We're able to perform at a level that maintains this excitement that we're seeing come in.
At a moment when so much is in flux, we have new practice facilities being broken ground on, a ton of coaching changes, front office changes, everyone coming up for free agency after next year. How do you think about what the future looks like, both just as a player who's in free agency yourself and as a leader who's trying to chart a course when so much is uncertain?
I mean, I'm a very optimistic person. I'm very idealistic, I guess you could say. And so I feel like the future is like blindingly bright, honestly, I mean, I'm 13 years in, and I've now played in what I can say is a home of a practice facility, and I've flown charter. Like, I never imagined that would happen, let alone while I was playing, And so these indications to me show that what we've always been feeling from the inside are finally coming to fruition. And I mean, I envision us being able to play only in the WNBA and not having to, supplement incomes in other ways. I envision athletes from other countries like aspiring to come and play and have a career in the WNBA, and perhaps only the WNBA. There's so much that can and I think will happen, and I really feel like we're just on the cusp of it.
What does it feel like to see those possibilities open up, or at least the timeline speed up in a way that, just might have seemed unthinkable 5 or 10 years ago?
Oh, it feels amazing. It feels surreal, but it's not. I'm also trying to make sure that I occupy this space of like, yeah, no, this was supposed to happen, and not out of a fear that it'll disappear. I'm someone who always wants sustainable change, and I hope that those who are also contributing to this change understand that we want this to last a long time. And the feeling of it happening and it staying, I think, is that of yes and.
How do you think about ambition in that context of like, yes, you want this to be sustainable, you want to make sure that this is going to last, but also you can kind of dream much bigger than maybe you could have a couple years ago? It's like, what is reaching for enough at this point?
I mean, I think when you're in an industry like sport and specifically women's sports, I'm not sure if enough should be in our vocabulary. I think that you always shoot for the stars and try to land on the moon, or are thankful that you land on the moon, perhaps. I think that you can never shoot too high, and I say that with the confidence that we exist as a cohort of women who understand the business to the degree that we can negotiate and aspire and strive for things that make sense, that makes sense today, that makes sense for us, that makes sense to build off of in the future. And right now nothing is enough right now.
Anything else that stands out to you about this moment or about the league at this time?
I mean, I think that I'm overwhelmed with how much we're experiencing. I'm hoping that fans and followers are also excited and understanding that this isn't just a moment, that this is what we've been talking about for such a long time. And I want us to continue to respect and build and honor those who are here, those who were here before, and those who are coming. And we need to establish that, yes, we have the foundation of being built from a very long-standing and existing professional league, but we are our own, and leaning into that, especially for the future.